And then update on David, he and his family went to church this morning.
Awesome.
They went to a Baptist church that's 2 minutes from his house. He said he can walk there. And they sang Good, Good Father. And he was so thrilled, and he remembered singing that here. And he said he was able to worship with the song, and he wanted to know if we could sing it today. And when I was getting ready, I thought, because he sent me a voice thing through WhatsApp and telling me about it, and so I wanted to forward that to Shannon. And but I didn't know that Shannon had WhatsApp. He said he's got it anyway, so I didn't know how to forward it to him. And I thought, I bet you anything Shannon doesn't have one song today, because usually he'll text me the songs, and he hadn't texted me the song. So I said, I bet you anything he's waiting. I bet this is the song. Sure enough, he showed me his phone, and he had 2 songs picked, and he still God hadn't given him the 3rd song. So we're going to sing Good, Good Father for David. So Susan, if you don't know, David, or Ken, he goes by both, he's our German congregation.
Well, but his family went this morning with him to church.
Yes, and he said they liked it, and he said his mother really liked the singing. So,
But it was a Baptist church.
yeah, it was a Baptist church. We can't find there was a Church of God in his town, but they closed down during COVID.
We
So,
listen and we don't judge.
So anyway, so we're real excited about that. So I did listen to a podcast this morning, but I went over my notes. But my podcast kind of fed into our lesson and kind of took me down a different thought pattern that I want to go down with y'all. That's kind of heavy, but I think it's needed. So anyway, so to recap what we've been talking about, we've been talking about the captain of the guard for Saul, and also now for his son Ishbosheth after Saul's death, and his name was Abner, and he was in league with Saul trying to kill David for years. So we have Abner, who was Saul's captain of the guard, and then we have Joab, who was David's captain of the guard. And these are, the only thing I can think of is equivalent to maybe a vice president, or maybe even more powerful than that. So Abner, and also Abner, Joab was David's right-hand man before he became king. Okay, so he's been with David a long time. All right, so Abner, if y'all remember, he took a concubine that had been Saul's, and Ishbosheth, his son now, he didn't like it. He confronted Abner. This made Abner mad, and then Abner turned coat and then came to David and after this and said that he would bring all the leaders of Israel to his side, to David's side. So this shows you who's really got the power. It's not Ishbosheth, it's really Abner. And so David said he would accept him if on one condition, that he would restore his wife Michal to him. So when Joab heard this, he didn't like it, and he went behind David's back. Joab being the captain of the guard, David's right-hand man, he didn't like it that David was going to take Abner, accept Abner, and so he pursued Abner and he killed him. So last week we left off with David pronouncing a curse over Abner's family for this killing, and David also pronounced that he was free of any of Abner's shed blood because he didn't know anything about this plot to kill Abner. And so it was really quite comical, in my opinion, because then David required Joab, the murderer, to attend the service that he held for Abner, and he made Joab dress in sackcloth and ashes, or sackcloth, and publicly mourn Saul's captain of the guard, the enemy, turned Benedict Arnold. So I thought that was kind of comical. And so this was quite a confusing development because Abner had tried to kill David, for years. And here David is publicly mourning him. So I think verse 34 in 2 Samuel chapter 3 that we read last week gives a lot of insight. So that's where we're going to pick up. We're going to read that again. 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 34. And it says, "Thy hands were not bound, nor thy feet put into fetters as a man calleth before wicked men, so fellest thou. And all the people wept again over him. So I think David was really lamenting Abner's unjust death, which, like we talked about last week, was just really crazy. Okay, this is your enemy. This is your arch rival. This is somebody who sought you and tried to kill you like a dog, for years. And so Joab had killed Abner, we know, for the revenge of his brother Asahel, which we read about last week, who Abner killed because Asahel was upset over his other brother getting killed in a battle. And if you remember the story, Asahel took off running like a gazelle, the Bible says, following Abner. But here's the thing: as goes the head, sorry. I got two sets of notes here. So Abner warned Asahel to leave him alone. Remember that? He was like, punk, leave me alone. Turn around, go back. I mean, he gave him a chance to get away, and Asahel just kept going after Abner, and so Abner killed him. And so now Abner is dead because Asahel's brother was Joab. So there's a family thing going on here. So there's a lot that we could say about this, but first of all, vengeance is the Lord's, right? And second, then this is where I kind of want to go down a rabbit trail, because I think it's important and we talked about this last week. Should we mourn over the death of unsaved people, wicked people who we know that don't know the Lord? See, it doesn't make sense that David is mourning over Abner. He's the enemy. Okay, and so and it's hard to hate those who wrongfully treat you. It's hard not to hate those who wrongfully treat you. But I thought about the Israelites, the Israelis today before October 7th, and I thought they were a prime example of treating your enemies well and everything, because I've heard story after story of those people who lived on that border with Gaza, how they would, many of them would do kind things for these Gazan people, and they would pick them up and they would bring them into Israel to go to doctors and stuff. And I just saw one of the people that was killed, and one of the older men that they died, and they just returned his body on Saturday, and that's what they said of him, that he would go get these Gazans and he would drive them to Israeli doctors and stuff. But then on the flip side, see, I saw this video on Instagram of this little tiny girl, and she was all dressed in black, veiled face, everything, and she was singing some song about killing Jews, and she had a knife and she was sawing her doll's head off. So these people are evil, and they are raising their children to be evil, and they're raising their children to be killers. And I don't think it's in our fallen nature. It does not come natural, right, to have mercy on these people and to love these people. But I think that Israelis were doing the best they could to show them kindness and love and apart from Christ. But Jesus died for these people, and judgment will come to these people. And what got me thinking about this was because I was listening to this podcast about this Marine lawyer who ended up with a little girl, well, baby, like just a few, like 8 weeks old. He was in Afghanistan, and this baby's skull was shattered, her femur was broken, she was burned on her face. Her parents were terrorists. Both the mother and the father were killed in an attack by the U.S., and so the U.S. didn't know what to do with this baby, and so they took this baby. And anyway, it was a long story, but this Marine lawyer ended up with this baby. And the baby's here in the U.S., and Afghanistan is fighting to get this child back. And so it's this big, long legal thing going on. But what I was thinking was, You know, and then they were talking about, and I've heard this before, they were talking about how this is and he said, they even said the U.S. was for a while just allowing this, but the Afghan men, it is not uncommon, and I hate for the kids to hear this, but to dress little boys up like little girls and rape them. That's a very common thing. And this lawyer in the Marines, he said he was told that this is a cultural thing, you know, we can't do anything about it. So I was thinking about this, where do you draw the line? And I know that David is our example, and I know that it's God's heart for all people to come to know him. And Jesus died for all people. But where do you draw the line? See, justice still has to prevail. So I'm thinking, okay, well, how does David fit into reality? And this was his reality, that this man had tried to kill him for years. So should we be so, because I know the young people today are all about love, joy, peace, you know, that kind of thing. You know, and peace at all costs. And that's going to be the Antichrist's mantra, is peace. He's coming as a peacemaker. So how do you think we can reconcile David's attitude with reality that there are evil people? And if they have their choice, they will kill you.
Is that a demonic possession or a DNA level evil? I mean, it seems
Well,
to
it's
me all
definitely-
things are spiritual.
I mean, it's definitely a demonic evil, but this is, I mean, can you imagine this is how you raise your children? You raise them to
Yeah.
kill and die?
Yeah. And the children are just taught that. They were innocent.
Exactly.
They were
And
taught that.
they will not be held accountable as children. They can't be. They don't know any better. Their minds aren't developed enough a child does what he's told.
But as they grow up,
As they grow up, then they're going to be accountable.
It's hard to overcome what you've been taught.
Oh,
So,
listen, if you ever go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a counselor, the first thing they're going to do is, what's your first memory as a child? Because it always goes back to childhood.
yeah.
The problems we have today always go back to childhood.
But yet, we do hear stories of some of these terrorists coming to Christ.
Yes,
And
which
that
is an
truly a miracle.
absolute miracle. Absolute miracle. So how do we reconcile David's attitude? And he could have killed him. He could have killed Abner. And really he had every right to kill Abner. Okay, Abner was the enemy. Abner tried to hunt him down like a dog. But yet he didn't, and he showed him mercy, and he showed him kindness, okay? All right, but say you do that to these Afghan people, they'll kill you. Or these Islamist people, they'll kill you. As we saw on October the 7th. So, anybody have a suggestion how we can reconcile what David is doing? Okay.
I can only take a couple of stabs at it, no pun intended, but Israel is what Abner was defending, yet through Saul. Now David is in charge of Israel, so his loyalty was to Israel, the chain of command militarily. And the other thing was, there's no honor in getting assassinated, stabbed in the back. If it's a military loss, you know, if you're confronting an enemy face to face. So I think that was part of his mourning, was that, like, as a man falleth before wicked men, it was a surprise attack. They weren't facing off in battle. That's just
Yeah.
my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, that even if he should have been killed, deserved to be killed, the way it was done like that, stabbing him in the back, was wrong.
Right.
And the way David would never kill Saul, I think David felt like
The similar
God
loyalty.
appointed them as kings, so David didn't have the right.
And now Abner was coming, making amends, going to make peace with him. He was going to be the instrument for bringing the rest of the country to David. And it was kind of part of the deal, you know? If he had Abner on his side helping him, then he didn't have to fight a war to try to bring it about
Yes,
and all
very
that.
true.
It just made it so much easier.
Very true. Okay, how about the fact that we see David killing other people? And he killed the, young man who brought, word that he had killed Saul. He was gonna kill,
Joab,
no, his wife's, husband.
Isbeth?
Nabal.
Nabal.
Yeah, or Nabal. He was gonna kill him, remember, and Nabal's wife is the one who stopped him. So it's not that he won't kill anybody.
Oh, no.
It's just that he wouldn't kill God's anointed.
Yeah.
Now,
I
why?
think it was a strategic move.
I think so
That he
too.
was bringing peace.
I think you're right.
And it was-
I don't think that it was because he thought that Abner was anointed. I think it was a political move
Yes.
that, okay, this is a way I can get back the whole land. I can become king over Israel without a war, just like Diana
Yeah.
said.
And Joab was messing that up.
Yes. So, okay, but then what do we do? How can we have the heart that David has of mercy and compassion and kindness like we saw, and yet judge evil? And then maybe I've opened up a can of worms with judging. The Bible doesn't say you're not to judge. The Bible says you are to judge. You are to judge between good and evil. You are to judge what is right and wrong. But he says, by your fruits you shall know them. So it's not that you're not to, what he says you can't judge is a man's heart.
And don't look down on them.
Right, and don't look down. So I think that's sort of, we could apply David's attitude towards, okay, we can have pity and we can have sorrow and we can mourn for these people that like the Islamic people. We can see there's such a fine line, because I hate what they do. I hate what they stand for. I hate, the abuse that what they do to children and killing me. It's horrible. So I can't condone that. I have every right to judge that. Okay, but what I can do is apply mercy and say, pray for them and pray God will open their eyes, and if they die, I can feel bad for them that they went to hell. What do y'all think?
I have a real life example
Okay.
in my own life. And it was back when ISIS was storming across Iraq and Syria and all that. And I was watching this video of these ISIS guys getting one of their buddies ready to go do a suicide bombing. They had loaded up this armored vehicle with a bunch of explosives, and they were going to go blow it up in this little village. And the guy was only he was probably between 18 and 22. Super young guy. And he was in tears because he didn't want to die. And he was just bawling. And all his buddies were like, oh no, you're going to be a hero for Allah and all this other stuff. And that poor kid was sold a lie. And in that moment, because ISIS was horrific. They were the most brutal of the brutal. And yet I felt so much pity for that poor kid, because he had been sold a lie, and it was leading to his death and probably eternal damnation. And I didn't even look at him as a terrorist anymore. I looked at him as a soul that needed the Lord desperately. And that's the only time that's ever happened. But it really opened my eyes, because I truly felt pity for that poor bot. And he did. He went and blew up, the tank and everything, and killed a bunch of people. And so
And they said that they would put explosives in the bicycle tires of little kids and then send them to the U.S. military bases, send them to the gates and blow them up. And he said most of the time the kids didn't even know there was anything in there.
I mean, Hamas they've even booby-trapped coffins that they've given back to Israel before, of people that have been killed. They'll booby-trap the coffins so that they'll explode and kill more people.
Wow.
I mean, it's truly evil.
Wow.
So I don't think any of us can even begin to understand it.
No.
And so I think back to Chris's question, yes, I mean the evil is so demonic that it's off the charts, and we can't even fathom it. I can't.
I really can't fathom.
You
how
know,
people-
so literally, you cannot kill them with kindness because they will kill you.
That is why God instituted a government.
You got a second and a third on that.
God instituted government to judge evil. And therefore it is the government's right to viciously and, violently put evil down. That was my
Yeah,
point before.
and if you read the law, meaning Moses' law, and you read, in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, I mean, it's there. Because you have to judge evil.
Yeah, otherwise you're condoning it.
Well, you're condoning it, and you will be slaughtered by it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Lauren and Tim served, you guys see combat?
I mean, not man to man. I
You
know
still
Tim-
lobbed a few shells and. some
Well, I
bullets?
know, so when we were overseas, when I was on the ship, we have, when something comes inbound, we were in the Persian Gulf, and we had Iranian, for lack of a better term, it was a puddle jumper, but it was like a small little plane, and all they were doing was reconnaissance. See where we were and how close they can get to us hitting the button. So there were nights where you'd be laying in your rack and you would hear a launch alert 60s, which you literally, it's the first round of helicopters that leave the ship to tell whoever it is, hey, back off. And at one point, I wasn't on this cruise, but I know Tim was. They launched alert 30s, which is like 30 seconds, essentially, in flight plan. And when he told me that, I was like, that's how close you came. He said, that's how close we came. He said, now, we launched a missile towards them and probably made them pee their pants because they didn't realize what we had. He said, but it was close enough for me to be like, yeah, this is it. So, I mean, we never, as close to that fear as I can say that I ever came was when I was in Bahrain. And that's just because you had us at our base and them at theirs. And we're holding M16s, 50 cals on the backs of our little Humvees, and you look across the street and they have Russian SKSs. And they're me to that door. And they're guarding us just like we're guarding them. And you're waiting for somebody to screw up. And then we get on a bus and we have to go through them to get to the town to go out and eat or do whatever we're gonna do for the day. If you wanted to. I didn't leave the base. I was a little bit of a chicken, as Tim said.
You were smart.
So there's something to be said for peace through strength.
Mm-hmm.
And we owned a school when James and Robbie graduated from our school. And so that gives you a timeline. We sold it in 2008. And anyway, but so during 9/11, when that was the first year we had started the school, was during 9/11. And anyway, so all the boys were telling me after 9/11 that if they instituted the draft, they were gonna go hide in the woods. Well, I'd have beat the crap out of my kids if they had said that. And so you know what? And it disturbs me. And of course, hopefully we're coming out of this. But this, peace at all costs, it's not possible. It is not possible until the millennial reign. And until the millennial reign, until Jesus comes and makes it all right, that we have to have peace through strength. And these kids who think, we need to, love everybody. You can't love somebody who's going to kill you. They hate your guts and they're going to kill you. It's just the way it is. So to tie in David's attitude, again, I think it was more the office. And I think it was political when it came to Abner. But I think that we should take on his stance of mourning the people and mourning the evil that they're in. And mourning the fact that they don't know the Lord. Mourning the fact that they're going to hell. And pray for these people.
Well, I said a thing, I sent you, I think, on an email, but I don't know if you saw it. Ramadan begins, I think it's March 1st,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a time where the Muslims particularly are seeking God and seeking to be closer
Allah.
to God. Yeah,
Allah,
their
because they
version
don't.
of,
So Allah
Yeah,
is
yeah.
not God.
right, seeking Allah.
Uh-huh.
And it's a real time to pray for them to
Yes.
see the truth. And you can get a prayer calendar with prompts to remind you every day things to pray for them about.
Okay, I did not see that. If you email me something, make sure you tell me because
Text
I
you
don't
as
check it
well.
a lot. But David said that this morning, that at that Baptist church, because there's so many Islamic people in Germany now, because Germany just opened the door to Islam to come in. And he said that church this morning put out a prayer that they are committed to praying through Ramadan.
Okay,
And
good.
I don't know how long it lasts.
Month.
Oh, a whole month. So that church is going to pray. So why don't we
Yes.
join with that church in Germany and let's start praying for these. And of course we know that, you know, bottom line is our prayers are not going to stop Islam. But guess what? Our prayers may go and stop it in one person's life.
I'll find the link and
Okay.
send it to the
Okay, all
group.
right, yes. Now, had you not said that, had David not said that, do you think that's on my radar? No, because I don't know any Islamic people, you know.
Right.
And if I did, I stay away from them. My gift is not in evangelism, okay? Like, we kid around that James catches them and we clean them, okay? I am not good at catching them. That is not my gift, okay? So I will run the other way. I'm just being honest, okay? And but I think this is a great thing for us to do because it's a worldwide threat. Now, I didn't have this in my notes, but you know, Pope Benedict is probably on his deathbed. I'm expecting him to die, you know, at any minute.
Pope Francis.
Pope
I
Francis.
was like, wait a minute.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I just think of Benedict Arnold.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. Pope Francis, and he's 88. All right. I've had pneumonia. It is bad news. Okay, for an 88-year-old to survive pneumonia.
Double lung pneumonia too.
Yeah, is probably not going to happen.
Well, I just think there's, you know, God gives us breath and takes it away. He's taking away
Mm-hmm.
the Pope's ability to breathe.
And I don't know if y'all are familiar with Malachi, the priest.
Prophecy of the popes.
Prophecy of the popes. His name was Malachi. And do you remember what year that was, Robbie? 1500s or before that?
1300s.
1300s.
I don't know, it was the Middle Ages.
Yeah. He made a prophecy of the popes, and he named every pope up to Francis. And he was right. And so he says that Pope Francis is the last pope. And I saw something on TV where in the Vatican or whatever, they have, you know, the wall of all the popes. Well, there's no more room. After Francis, there's no space. So I guess it goes around the wall like this, and Francis is the last one, and there's no space. Okay, so many Catholics, all Catholics know about this prophecy, and so most Catholics believe that he's the last pope. So the next pope is the Pope of Revelation. All right, huh?
False prophet.
The false prophet, and so he is going to from what I understand, is believed that he's going to unite with Islam. Now, this Pope right now, and I'm not Catholic, but this Pope right now has embraced all religions, which Jeff and I have had this conversation a gazillion times, and I still don't understand it. Because Jeff's Catholic friends, because he was Catholic, his Catholic friends think that he is doomed to hell because he is no longer Catholic. And so I don't know how you can embrace all religions and embrace Islam and think that you're going to heaven because they're not Catholic. I don't get that. But Jeff says because he was Catholic and now he has turned his back on the Catholic Church, now they call it anathema, and he is anathemized and he is not going to heaven. All right, so I think, once again, I've known about this prophecy of the Pope for years, and it's exactly as was prophesied, and so we are in exciting times to see what is about to happen with this next Pope. Anyway, I think I'm saying all that to say, A, we're not going to be here, okay? We're not, and it's bothering me for people and people that I respect and I listen to on a regular basis. They're coming out, Donald Trump is not the Pope. How do they know? Nobody knows, okay? And we're not going to be here to know. You know what I mean? And so, so the bottom line is we're not going to be here, but while we are here, it's getting pretty exciting. And I think we need to guard our hearts while we are here to make sure that we don't cross over into hatred for any people group. And that's not easily done, and I don't think it's in our nature to do that. So if you start rising up hatred towards any group of people, then you just need to take it to the cross and just confess that to the Lord. And Lord, just like David living around Islamic people. We don't have that here. I mean, I know we do in certain areas. I know Roswell is got a lot of them, and there's a temple a mosque in Roswell. So I know they got more of a problem than we do here in Canton and Ball Ground and all that. But what I'm saying is, when you see them, just pray for them. Pray that their eyes will be opened and just guard. Let's just be like David and guard ourselves from hatred. And ask the Lord to give us love for these people, and just surrender how we feel about different people groups and ask God to just give us love for them that we don't have. So David he talks to me every day, and so you know how tall he is and how skinny he is. But he's gained 18 pounds. He's working out. He even got up at 6 o'clock this morning and worked out before church.
Wow.
And he's gained 18 pounds, and he feels so much better about himself in every way. And but he eats like an absolute horse. And Jeff said he thought we were going to have to take out a second mortgage to feed him while he was here. And so he cracked me up because he was saying that he's working at a grocery store cashiering, and he said they'll let him drink something, but they won't let him eat anything in 5 hours. And so this kid's got to eat all the time. And so he was like so frustrated and everything. And I said, well, pray about it. I said, ask the Lord to help you. And so he sent me a voicemail back, and he said he did. And he said his shift went perfectly. And he said he never really got hungry, and he never got in a bad mood, and because he gets hangry, right? And then he gets mad at the people and stuff and takes his hangriness out on the people. And he said it worked.
Well,
yeah, exactly. Chris is giving you an applause, David. So it's just all about surrendering to the Lord Jesus, however we feel. And the bottom line, Abner was not a man to love. Okay? He just wasn't. And he wasn't a good guy. And yet David mourned him. And so I think this is an example, again, of the heart that David had for God. And I want to be like that. I'd rather feel love for somebody than battle hatred, because that just eats you up. And then I thought it was interesting how the people mourned with David. And yes, Chris, they did have paid mourners back then, but here's the thing. And we see this here in the United States. As the head goes, so goes the body. And as David does, then the people did.
Well,
As Biden did, the people did.
my point was, it was more of a tradition than a heartfelt mourning.
And I think to some extent that's true. But again, I've seen this, I've lived long enough to see that with every president, it amazes me how the body of the United States follows the president, good, bad, or indifferent. And it was that way throughout the Old Covenant, with throughout the Bible. And I've done a study of the kings many years ago, and I think there were only like 8 that ever even started out righteous, and maybe only 2 that died righteous. And there were 43 kings in total, and of course most of them didn't end well. But see, once bad came in, read it. Once they turned bad, the people all turned bad. It's amazing. If they started out good, the people were good. If they went bad, the people went bad. And it's the same, I think, here in the United States. I mean, I could not believe how fast we declined as a nation after Biden. Now, we were on a decline with Obama, but man, did it escalate with Biden. And I'm like, you people have absolutely lost your cotton-picking minds. You know, how do you explain this? To the point where scientists and doctors were sitting in front of Congress saying they couldn't define a male and a female. Even during Obama years, they would have been able to define a male and a female. People just lost their minds. And so I think it's just the spirit of the age. It's just a demonic spirit that sweeps over people, according to who the leaders are. But on that note, I thought you might be interested to know that Israel had one ruling queen. Does anybody remember who she was?
Not a man dressed in drag.
No, it was actually a queen. And it was from, she sat on David's throne from 841 to 835 BC. And her name was Athaliah.
Oh, yeah.
And she was the daughter of the infamous Ahab and Jezebel. And we, of course, we read the story of Ahab. Everybody knows that story, Ahab. But I think we kind of, and I've read it 1,000 times, but it just never sunk in that oh my gosh, she was the first queen of Israel. And so she married Jehoram, who was the eldest son of Judah's King Jehoshaphat. And so, and if you remember, Israel was divided into 2 kingdoms. Remember, after Solomon, the kingdom was divided. And that was in, let's see, approximately, they said 975 BC. And if you want to read about her, she's in 2 Kings chapter 11, and she's also in 2 Chronicles 22-23. And Jeroboam, her husband, was the wicked king of Judah. And they had a son who took the throne. And he was 22 years old, and he was evil, just like his parents, and just like his grandparents. So evil ran in that family, obviously, and this is proven by the fact that Athaliah counseled. The Bible says that she counseled her son to do evil. And of course, that reminds me of these Afghan people, or not just the Islamic people who counsel their children to do evil. You know, teaching a little girl, maybe 4, to cut her doll's head off as if they were Jews. So you may remember the story, but her son, King Ahaziah, king of Judah, he only reigned for less than a year, because he was assassinated by Israel's king Joram. And you may know his name because he was captain of the guard of Ahab's army. And that was in 2 Kings 9:5 and 25. Now it was interesting because the prophet Elisha had anointed Jehu as the new king of Israel, and the Lord was using him to rid Israel of the wicked house of Ahab. Remember, God said he was getting rid of the wicked house of Ahab. Okay, but then you got her as king. And so when Athaliah got word that her son was dead, you won't believe what she did. I mean, here again, this is on par with Islam. And she did the most inconceivable thing that any of us can imagine. She killed her own grandsons to cut that male line off so that she could be queen. I mean, can you get any more evil than that? And unbeknownst to her, one grandson escaped, and his name was Joash. And he was an infant at the time, and you're going to recognize Joash because his aunt was the wife of the high priest, and they hid him, and they smuggled him out, and they hid him in the temple for 6 years while Queen Athaliah reigned over the land. And you can find this in 2 Kings 11, 1 through 3. So literally, she's just like her mother. You've heard that saying, right? She was just like her mother. She was just like evil Queen Jezebel and her evil father Ahab. Okay, so she ruled for 6 years. And then when the high priest Jehoiada, what he did was he set guards around the temple, and he publicly crowned the young Joash as the rightful king. And so the Bible says that she ran out of the palace when she heard about it, and she was screaming, "Treason, treason!" And so they arrested her right there, and they killed her. And so King Joash was only 7 years old. Remember him, the child king? He was 7 years old, and under the high priest Jehoiada, they tore down the temples of Baal. Remember how Jezebel, remember how she was all into Baal worship, and she had all those Baal priests, and Elijah called down fire from heaven and killed them and everything. They smashed the altars and all the images of Baal. They killed all the priests of Baal, and all the people rejoiced at the death of Queen Athaliah. So I just thought that was really interesting, because I really never made that. I've read it, I know the story, but it never dawned on me, oh my gosh, Israel actually had a reigning queen, and she was the only one. She's the only queen that they ever had. So I think that's important for us to know. So let's pick up at 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 35. This is our last verse in chapter 3. So it says, "And when all the people came to cause David to eat meat while it was yet day, David sware, saying, So do God to me, and more also, if I taste bread or aught else till the sun be down." So he's showing respect. He's fasting, showing respect. And I thought, okay, well that's what he did when his baby, later on, we're going to read about that. Remember when his baby, after with Bathsheba, was sick and gonna die, and while the baby was still alive, he was seeking God, he was fasting, he was showing reverence, and he was showing really that God was in control of life. And I think he was setting a phenomenal example to the people, because he was reverencing life. And I think we see that going on right now in Israel, how they're willing to trade. Is this not amazing to you? How they're willing to trade 100 Palestinians for one Israeli life?
Yeah.
You know, and they value life so much greater than we do.
Yeah.
And I think the United States sees things, you know, the good of the whole. That they are literally willing to do anything just to get that one life back, or just to get that one body back. And I think that says a lot. And so verse 36, it says, "And all the people took notice of it, and it pleased them, as whatsoever the king did pleased all the people." here we go. And I think it's no different. I don't know what it is. What do y'all think about the president? But I mean, as the president goes, so goes the people as a whole.
You know, with this Biden clown show, all the people were not behind it.
Well, and you know what I mean, not 100%. You're never gonna have 100%. But they sent us down hell for 4 years. And he didn't do it by himself.
No, they misled many people.
Yeah, but the people followed him as a whole.
I think it's easier for a person to do evil than it is for them to do good.
Yes, I think so,
To
too.
have a leader that gives them permission
Yes.
to be evil.
Yes, I think that's a great point. Because guess what? There's nothing good in us. The Bible says there's not one. There's not one thing good in me or you or anybody. And so I think she's absolutely right. That the president, if we have an evil president, he's just giving permission for your evil nature to come out and do. And the only reason we didn't follow along is because we have the Lord Jesus living in us.
And a lot of the stuff we're seeing come to light, thankfully, through this Department of Government Efficiency,
Yes.
were really planted during Obama's term.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. I
And
mean,
he took a number of actions that are now
Yes.
being used against him because he set a precedent
Yes.
that can be reversed back on.
Yeah, like Barbara and I have talked about, she said, she was a real tomboy growing up and stuff. And I was, I thought, I finally got some information. My sister just told me that she reminded, well, I don't remember, but she said my brother and his friend used to, she said, really roughhouse me, like bad, in a rough way, when I was really tiny. And I thought, oh, well, that explains a lot, because I've always kind of been tough, rougher, that kind of thing. And I went, well, there you go. They made me that way. And so I was, now I lost my train of thought. Oh, I know. So Barbara said, gosh, had homosexuality or transgender been a thing back then? She said, I might have gone that way. And I thought, me too, because really homosexuality wasn't a thing. I remember when I went to, I was not confronted with that until I got to Guantanamo Bay. And I remember like knowing something was weird about some of the girls on our floor, but they didn't include me, and I knew they were like different, but I didn't know what it was. And somebody told me they were homosexuals. I didn't even know what that was.
Well, and if you did hear about homosexuals back then, it was in a negative context.
Oh, exactly, but that was hush hush. My family. So now looking back, I know I can think of some people that were homosexuals, older people when I was growing up, but nobody talked about that. I mean, that was hidden, so really I did not know what that was. And so I'm thinking, but see, if this is in your face, if you're confronted with this and you don't have the Lord Jesus, how many of us might have gone that way or thought about, you're a tomboy or, there's just no telling. It's just by the mercy and grace of God that we all made it this far as I'm concerned. So we read, and all the people took notice of it, and it pleased them as whatever the king did pleased all the people. So I think that's interesting, building on what I said about the kings and the way the people followed the kings. And then in verse 37 it says, for all the people and all Israel understood that day that it was not the king, it was not of the king to slay Abner the son of Ner. And the king said unto his servants, know ye not that there is a prince and a great man fallen this day in Israel? And I am this day weak, though anointed king. And these men, the sons of Zeruiah, be too hard for me. The Lord shall reward the evildoer of evil, reward the doer of evil according to his wickedness. Wow. Well, there's a message for us, right? But now, does that mean that we're not to take action on evil? Does that mean that we shouldn't put people in prison? Does that mean that we should not, we should have no law against evil? No, you have to, because society would collapse. None of us would be alive. But I think what he's talking about is again, you know, God will be the one to judge the heart. God will be the one to have the final say on that person.
And that's the government's job, not individuals.
Exactly. And God set up laws. He set up the government. He said, go back to Leviticus and Deuteronomy. He set it all up because he knew man would kill. We would be already annihilated by now. And so another interesting fact was that Abner was related to Saul. They were blood relation. And Joab was a blood relation to David.
Yeah.
So this fact adds a whole nother layer of intrigue to the story, I think. And look at Biden and all his family, right? I mean, it's just in human nature to hire your family.
Yeah, and then Trump hires his family.
Exactly. And so I thought, well, did David look at Abner in the office only? You know what I'm saying? Did he look at the office only that he had as captain of the guard, or did he also look at his blood relation to Saul?
Now, this tribal thing, they were of different tribes,
Yes.
so the blood stays within the tribe.
Yes.
So, I mean, just saying they're of the same blood.
But what I'm saying was, okay, so if it was it all political, like Diana said, or did David take into consideration that Abner was blood relation to Saul?
Would not everybody of the tribe of, what tribe was it, Benjamin?
Benjamin.
All have blood of Benjamin?
But he was in a position of power right up under Saul. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I'm just speculating. So I'm just saying, you know, whatever his motivation, because the Bible does not tell us. I think it just shows this incredible nature of David, being a man after God's own heart, and a prayer that we should all pray to, that we too can, you know, love people. But that does not mean that justice won't be served. You can love and still want justice to be served, and that's something that I saw with the kids, that, well, we got to love everybody. We have to love the homosexual. Yes, you do love them, but you don't want to leave them in their sin. The problem with today's kids, today's college kids, they love them and want to leave them in their sin.
And even say how great they are.
Yeah, exactly. No, you can love them as an individual, but lead them out of that sin. So we need to pray that God will give us a love for people, a love to evangelize, a love for even the unlovable. But yeah, that does not mean that justice shouldn't be served, or that you shouldn't lead a homosexual out of that lifestyle, or an alcoholic. What are you going to do, leave an alcoholic an alcoholic? Well, then we just need to do away with AA. Or the drug addict. We'll just go ahead and buy them the drug if you love them. See, that doesn't make any sense. No, you love them out of that sin.
Somebody told me once, I can't remember who it was, but they said, you can't have mercy if there's no justice. And you can't have true justice if there's never any mercy either. So they go hand in hand. You have to have justice in order for mercy to be mercy. And for justice not to be tyrannical, mercy has to exist. But so it goes back to love the sinner and hate the sin. You know, just like the Lord will save you from whatever sins you've done, but He doesn't say He'll save you from the consequence of it. So just like a murderer who, you know, is on death row for killing somebody, he can get saved, gloriously saved, and go to heaven and be free. Doesn't mean he gets to wipe away the conviction.
I can't remember who was a famous,
That, the Manson family murders, that guy's a Christian. He has a whole prison ministry.
yeah,
And, you know, he'll die in prison.
Yeah.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
And he even says, hey, I'm here because
yes.
I deserve to be.
Yes. So that's a great point. When Jesus forgave us and he wiped the slate clean, does that mean we can go back and do the same thing we were doing?
No. In fact, there was a famous singer. She was Nikki Sixx's girlfriend in the 80s. If y'all know who Nikki Sixx is, he was the bassist for Motley Crue.
Yeah.
And she got radically saved in the late 80s, early 90s. And she was dying of, you know, some disease from doing drugs and sleeping around with, you know, everybody. And so she said, Lord, if you'll heal me, I will serve you in this capacity. Because she wanted to do ministry to, you know, people like her. And she did. She got healed. And she stinking went and did, she had a whole ministry for something like, you know, 10, 15 years, but she did eventually die of something else. But, you know, the Lord didn't have to heal her. He was gracious, he was merciful. But, you know, if she had died from all those consequences of living around, you know, sleeping around and doing drugs, that would have been sad, but we would have known that she would have been in heaven nonetheless. And that's the ultimate reward, especially for somebody who's, you know, done a whole bunch of bad.
We watched a movie last night. I got in on the middle of it. Jeff was already watching it, but it was on the Iran-Contra affair with Oliver North and all that kind of stuff, where the CIA set them up, approached this man who was airline pilot for American Airlines, I think. And anyway, it was all a big, huge, horrendous setup that was destined to go wrong. And anyway, so whoever was involved, I don't know if he recruited these other guys, but anyway, in the end, it all backfired, you know, and then it turned into that big government fiasco and all that. Well, the head of it that the CIA recruited, of course, he got shot and killed. And but one of the guys that was with him and did all the dirty work, he got saved and said he's a preacher in Alabama.
That was Barry Seal was the pilot.
Yeah, so he got killed.
Yeah,
It was a good movie. You have to ask Jeff what the name of it was.
it the one with Tom Cruise?
Yes. Oh, it was made in Ball Ground.
American Made is what it's called.
Yeah, it was made in Ball Ground, so you recognize Ball Ground.
And they really did Barry wrong because they set him up
Yes.
to go do all that. He was running guns. Well, when he would get down there, you know, it's the drug cartels that were running the airfields and stuff, and so they made him take drugs back, otherwise they'd have killed him. And so he's like, well, telling the CIA they're making me take cocaine back.
Mhm.
And they said, doesn't matter, keep doing it.
It was
So-
a horrendous setup
So
by the
then,
government.
then they wanted him to, you know, turn evidence on the drug cartels, and he did. And they actually showed those pictures of him with the drug cartel on TV.
Yeah, Reagan did it.
So that he could be.
Reagan
basically,
showed him.
They knew that he would be assassinated.
Yes, and he was. So anyway, but so just in closing, I think just ask God to you know, give you His heart. And as the world gets darker and darker and darker, we need God's heart to make it until He comes, and to think correctly, and to allow the Holy Spirit to guide our thinking. And David, he's around all these Muslims. They're a part of his life. You know what? Just ask God to give you the grace to love them, to pray for them, to not feel bad towards them. You know, and I know He can't conjure that up. I couldn't conjure that up. You know, I can only do that by asking the Holy Spirit to give me the right attitude towards them. Because listen, any of us who are left on our own, we're not going to think like God thinks. I mean, it's just a fact. And so that concluded chapter 3. And I hope that you got something out of that. And next week we'll start chapter 4. And then David's going to become king of all of Israel next week. And so we're going to start getting into some really cool stuff with him. And finally, Robbie, and
Finally,
but you know what? Who's in a hurry?
nobody.
We've dug out a lot of gems. And I think my whole goal is to make you read the Old Testament in a different light. It's really exciting. You just have to put a little thought and imagination into it. And just, I love it. I really do. And it can become so exciting. The Old Testament is like a huge soap opera. Who needs days of our lives when you got the Old Testament? You know, you just got to add a little of your own, flower it out, use a little imagination on the TV of your mind, and then it really gets exciting. So join me next week when we start chapter 4. And thanks for coming.
You do.